Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Do It Live podcast for this week. In Autonomy, starting last night, we started getting into the entrepreneurial side of things. But the first clip I got for you today is going to wrap up the Q&A from last week, where we were talking about sales. So here we go. Let's roll this first clip. Okay. Share sound.
Another comment is kind of a holdover and continuation from last week as well. I just wanted to thank you for offering a different perspective on sales. That's not the typical, what we saw in the interview, or I'm sorry, the intermission clips. It's really, you offer a different perspective on it. That's not the pushy salesman trying to get over on you. It's trying to be an equitable exchange, and I really appreciate that different perspective.
And I appreciate hearing it because it's like the third time, and it's a third different way I've heard it this week, because I always see it from this perspective, and I'm always just seeing like those people, not from a conceited perspective, but it's like if you know how to do something right and you see people doing it wrong, and the people who are doing it wrong are ripping people off, but they're still making money, like you can't just say, oh, that's sour grapes because you don't know how to do this. Like, no, I can do that thing, and I can do it higher and better. And I don't have to do any of those techniques to be able to do it like that. And it's kind of like, I can complain about that, or I can fill that gap with, here's how I see things could be done and have been done the way I was taught and the way I was around people for several years who only did that method of no bullshit. Like there was no room for bullshit in any of the process. But when I went to corporate world, they don't have that culture of excellence. I was very disappointed. Like my entrepreneur career started out being a franchisee for a house painting company that trained executive skills into college students to run their own businesses. That was like here on the integrity, productivity, like efficiency, effectiveness, professionalism scale. The highest I ever got in corporate world was a couple places like this, and they were really small companies. And anytime I worked at a bigger company, it was like people drinking toxic water, like sewage, thinking it's clear water. And I'm like, this is not a good environment to stay in, because sooner or later you're going to start to agree that that's water, right? Because everyone's saying that's what it is. So yeah, I immersed myself in the corporate environment with these skills for 5-6 years, and I was really successful with that, but that was not meaningful or substantial to me ever. Did I ever feel like I was really helping somebody? Yeah, but they're like, I'm helping a manager who's working in the big company. The company doesn't care. Those big companies don't care. They got money, they got options. Somebody's going to do business with them. It's a real grind. So to know and have the confidence that I didn't need to hang out in a corrupt environment. I had skills, I had value. I wasn't going to prostitute myself. And then to put myself into the unknown and say, I don't know what I'm going to do from here, but I'm going to figure it out, and it's going to be better than where I just came from, because that was like a cesspool swamp type of situation. I worked with some people that did not have any right working at the place that they're working. Retired NFL football players with no skills being in charge of vice president of sales for a big area in a multi-billion-dollar company. Not the skill set to manage, none of the culture of excellence. No skills. Yeah. So there were contradictions and things that didn't fit in. And that goes again, because if people don't know what done right looks like, all sorts of things can get squeezed in there. So by putting yourself through a system where it's like, okay, here's the whole sales arc. Here's the marketing part that kicks off that. You can understand the whole system. Anywhere you go to get a job, anyone you talk to in the process will likely not know any more than they're being told at any given time through their career. So if you come in with the big picture, biggest frame of reference always wins. So this is, there's an expert public speaker, but his profession is making pitches. So if you're a company and you needed to go raise $20 million from venture capital, you call this guy, you cut him a check for $250,000 and say, Oren Claff, ORENKLAFF is his name. Oren, we want to pitch deck. We're going to this bank. We're going to this venture capital. We want you to do it. Here's $2 million. We'll give you 10% of what you get, right? So this guy, his whole thing is just making presentations and making the pitch. If you get anywhere through his YouTube videos, so you can pick this all up for free, what he teaches is frames of reference. And if you come into a meeting and you set the biggest frame of reference, everything else falls into that frame of reference. Who can think the biggest and put it on the table? That's like a game in the world, in business. And that's what pitch mastery would teach you, right? So we have a couple students in here because I bought that course, but I don't have time to go through it. So we've delegated some of these systems and activities so we can acquire the best methodologies in all these different practice areas, but I don't also have time to be the best practicer in that methodology. So we have other people that are kind of picking up those skills. Anyway, frames of reference come from you understanding big picture, whether it's how the world works or what the sales process is. It's going to work very similarly. So Justin Olson mentioned, I think it was in a Q&A the other night, that he went in and talked to somebody who was working in sales, very successful, been there 20 plus years. And Justin was the first person he had ever bumped into who understood the big picture. And that guy working there understood he didn't have the big picture, that he had never understood the whole process. He just understood his little interactive part, right? Which is more valuable? And which gives you more confidence, right? So to be able to have the conversation and understand allows you to play in all these different areas. Also, the other thing that opens doors of access is consistency, just continuing to show up, pleasant attitude, always being helpful. And I was just thinking of Gus in the meeting before. It's like Gus is always showing up. He's easy to work with. He's got a great sense of humor. He's got a good personality. He's got high aptitude. And at some point, he's going to hang out just long enough where it's like, boom, he just locked on and targeted his interest. He just found his thing, right? So putting yourself out there consistently, just knowing that you're here in the world to do what? Blank. What is it? Fill in the blank. What are you here to do? And then get up every day and start doing that and see what jumps into your obstacles. Like, what obstacles are there? There's some obstacles going on outside that none of us have a lot of control over, but there's a high level of interest because it affects many, many people's lives. And there's other things we can directly do to progress our projects during the week. And can we keep focused on the things we want to do and need to do? And are the obstacles jumping on our radar? Are they obstacles for the thing we're trying to do? Or are they just obstacles that we turn and we deal with because they're there? And being able to say, I don't need to deal with that now. I need to deal with this, move this forward. This takes care of that. And then you have consistency because you're able to continue doing that over time. So one of the biggest lessons out of the course is consistency. And you guys have made it through over half the course. So I'm proud of you. And if you can continue going through the rest of the course to graduation, you're going to see these skills almost become like you can use them without knowing, like intentionally using them. Instead of, what I'm saying is with practice, they become, the explicit understanding becomes implicit. You can just do it without thinking, oh, what do I do right here? You won't have to bring up the instructions is what I mean. Somebody will approach you. You'll have a conversation. All of a sudden you'll be talking about their problems, providing them with value. And you'll be like, oh, this is the part where I say this. And you're gonna be like, I just made my first sale, or I just helped refer to somebody to get their problem solved with somebody else I knew. And they, I matched those two up. Those are wins. Those are breakthroughs. There's a student in season 1 named Dan. He had been a real estate appraiser for like 14 years. He went through the sales exercises that we're doing this week, and he went out, he closed a couple deals, and then he quit his job because he's like, I can do this for myself. How many times do I have to do it for myself before I figure I can do it for myself? For him, it was like less than 5 times, I think. Like he went out and did the thing, and he's like, I don't need to work there and work for this guy I don't like. So if you're in an environment and you're working for someone you don't like, and you're probably not getting paid what you feel you should be getting paid, what are you going to do about it? You're going to sit there and, but as soon as he got the skills, he was like, I'm over here now. And I wouldn't recommend you go that fast. but you can if you want to. That's what he showed. He's like, you know, and he might have struggled. He might have had a little revenue dip and had to come back up, you know, but making the move, getting into action, just doing it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be all the way planned out. But the idea is you want to be in action consistently. Like there's a saying that if you want something done, give it to the busy person, because they're already in action. These other people are like, oh, I gotta get a cup of coffee first. They're not started yet. If you're always in action, if you're always like in process of being an active player in your own game of life, then when something comes at you, you're prepared. You're not sitting there dazed and confused like most people, right? So being aware, participating in your own life, like it's a sport that you can win. You can win. It's a rigged game, but you're learning about that. The game's not over yet. Why would we learn it's a rigged game in the middle of the game? Oh, that's empowering, right? If you learned it's a rigged game right at the end, a lot of people do, by the way, they learn it only at the end. What am I supposed to do with that? But we have noticed, we're like, hey, we can adapt, evolve, and overcome with this, that we can turn our creative thinking on, start to see the opportunities that exist, start to map those to reality, and we can start changing the future by writing our own scripts in life. And as more and more people do that, guess what? It's harder for the people that Bill Bloom was writing about to do what they do and kill so easily without discretion. There's like, you know, we had a president who was like, I'm good at killing people. We had a president that killed American citizens with drones. Nobody said boo. So if we don't want to inherit a world where we have no say anymore, we have to learn how to use our say in the world peacefully, but effectively, assertively, but politely. I think it's possible.
All right, so I almost failed to remember, but I'm here today because it's Joshua Hale's birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday, Joshua. And that was from the last week's Q&A on Sunday. And the thing that really stuck out to me about that clip was the talking about expanding your frame of reference. Because it seems like in this day and age, you got so many forces trying to constrict your frame of reference, put you in the smallest box possible so that plenty of people can be fit on the shelf. But then when you're in that tiny box, you can't see beyond it. You can't see what's outside of the shelf or what possibilities are there, maybe outside of the room that the shelf's in. So just being able to see more and see the problems that are around you, and that helps you see opportunities to solve those problems. I mean, that's where the value lies in the sales. That's how you learn how to solve people's problems, and then they appreciate it and help you solve problems of your own, whether that be you don't have enough money to do what you want, or you need their help doing some sort of service that they provide. So anybody have thoughts on that a little bit?
How's it going, Jason?
Oh, hey, Danny. What's going on?
Doing great. No, just had a great experience on last night's presentation. My background is in sales, and so to stack that against what was presented last night, in my honest assessment, it took me 20 years of learning things on my own and very independent trainings from a lot of different places that I amalgamated, and it still wasn't as content rich as last night's presentation was. So for anybody listening to this, what was presented last night and the week before was of great value, because I've lost track of the money I've invested to learn some of that stuff. and so it's just a matter of putting it out in the world. And I think we're in a great system to not only learn it, but practice it and really put it out in the world.
Yeah, I'd agree. It seems like a lot of the sources that are presenting information like this have a piece here, a piece there, but they're lacking the broad picture. They're lacking that expanded frame of reference. But yeah, that's
That's
one
true.
thing that I do like about this class is it seems to incorporate all those disparate elements into one holistic, unified whole.
That's true too. It's all integrated, and it's presented in a context that you can take it in naturally. You're able to process it and really put it back out there. It's just I didn't have that benefit learning it from other systems. It was kind of like, here it is, do art thou will with it, and you had to figure out what worked and what didn't. And so in this referencing it, we know it works, so we're able to quantify it, it's provable, and then we're able to practice it, because that's a key to it too. Is just because you know it doesn't mean you're proficient in putting it out there. And so that's something I had to learn over the years. Is wasn't that we were doing it wrong or doing presentations wrong or interacting with people wrong. It's just there's better ways to present certain things, and that takes time.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, and the practice aspect of this course too. Learning it in maybe within your business, if they have sales training or something, that's kind of high pressure because you're expected to succeed within that business in a certain time frame, or you might have a certain quota that you got to reach. So, with all that extra pressure, it's hard to be relaxed enough to actually integrate it all. But we talk about low pressure systems in this class, and if you don't do it
That's
now,
what works.
oh yeah, if you don't do it now, that's no problem. You do it when you want to.
Yeah. And so coincidentally, my background in sales revolves around the paint business. And so I used to be a direct contact for painting contractors. So when Richard uses his stories about when he was in the house painting business, I can relate well with that, because I have firsthand experience on that whole process as a supplier. And yeah, there is pressure from the manufacturing side to go out and market products. And the benefit of what I had was I knew my products worked because I used them. I could quantify it, and so I didn't use a lot of the internal sales jargon that was given to me. I knew that, okay, it's good, it's provable, but I don't think that will be acceptable from my client base. I knew that then. And so I had to go out and do or study a different style. And that's why I went to all these other trainings, because that wasn't paid for by the company. I made that investment. And so I learned that through either a real estate side or some other group that was an entrepreneurial side, how to present to contractors. And they were very receptive to that, because it sounded like, from their feedback, hey, thank you for being authentic and not sounding like like a salesman. Uh, so so I was able to build my business that way by not sounding like a salesman.
Oh yeah, right. Well, yeah, and you knew the product was quality, but how do you let the client know what kind of quality your product has? And
Sure.
different people hear different things, so you got to
Yeah.
you got to know your audience that you're talking to, so that they're actually going to hear you and take in the knowledge that you have. Well, yeah, and I also related to the painting, because last week during the Q&A, while he was talking about that, I was painting an apartment, listening to it on my headphones. So a lot of painters around.
Yeah, no, it's an honest business. It's a gentleman's business if you make it out to be that way. And so the unfortunate thing is there are a lot of people that paint, but they're not professional painters, or they're good at painting, but they're bad business people. And so depending on who I was working with, as I got to know them, they got to know me. It wasn't always about me just selling them a product. I wanted to be their unofficial business partner. And what that means, hey, I have a vested interest in you being successful. And so some didn't believe that, others did. And so the ones that did, they're in a much better position business wise now, because I talk to them as business people.
Yeah. Well, and also with this class, when you're out there in the business world, working with different people, a lot of times you get to get a good feeling of what done wrong looks like. And over time, you can kind of pare down, and kind of deduce what right looks like. But if you actually have a group of people showing you up front, here's what done right looks like, that can save you so much time and effort and heartache and pulling your hair out.
Oh yeah, it does. But yeah, I just can look back on my journey. It was just the beautiful thing is, I'm glad I know what I know, but at the same time, in this training, it's good to see it in one big picture put together by the same artist. And we get a say in that as well. We get to contribute to that. We get to practice it. And so I'm very thankful for this opportunity to be part of that, because there's nobody else doing this. Nobody.
Oh, yeah.
Not this level. Mm-mm.
Oh, yeah. Well, and in my business, I've had a few interactions with business coaches and motivational speakers and the like. But the thing that always got me about those is it seems so isolated. I mean, you're working with the coach, and they have other clients, but a lot of times you don't seem to be interacting with their other clients. And I mean, sure, some people, that's probably because they're trying to pull something over on you, and they don't want their other clients to let you know about that. But just being able to interact with all the other students in the class, I mean, that puts you heads above just listening to someone teach you.
Well, that's the other beauty of this too, is we're learning from a student perspective, but we're all peers here. We all understand things like natural law and freedom and having our rights and putting out good work into the world and whatnot. And some people don't come to the table with that kind of motivation. And so I learned that even through the interview, that I wasn't going to be around typical students. I was going to be around people that were like-minded peers, and I want to put my best foot forward. And because I'm around other students that expect excellence, and so that helps. I mean, I came up through a school system that they didn't care if I showed up for school or not, and nobody promoted excellence or study this or the value of real education, none of that stuff. I had to do that independently of the school system. And so to see people here that they get it, they understand what's going on in the world, and they're not just going to roll over and go with the tide. They're going to make their way. And that's a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it seems like a lot of times the bar is set high, but somebody else has tied your shoelaces together.
Yeah.
But here it's like the bar's set high, but you got a nice trampoline or springboard to help you get up there.
Oh yeah, no, that's immediate value. Even in my own organization, off to the side, it's hard to keep that bar high when everybody else's bar is set low, and so that's what attracted me to this as well. Was okay, this is an opportunity for me to not only raise. That's noise in the background. Not only to raise my bar higher, but to help pull other people up as well. And so, because sometimes it's hard to tell if my bar is set at the right place. And so this is a great way to see where I'm really at, where can I go, who can I get involved, and we're around great people. You don't get this other places.
That's for sure. All right. Well, I think I might move on to the next clip, which kind of gets into what we were finishing off with there. Let's see.
Cool.
So up next we had a guest speaker last week, Vivian Vives, I think was her name. And she had a kid who she put him in a private school, but she quickly realized that might not have been the best idea. And she decided to take her child's education, maybe not into her own hands, but give it back to her child's hands. to see how he did with that. And it seems like he did pretty
Awesome.
well. So let's hear a little bit about that. Oh,
Well, and the fact that, you know, we never left him at a daycare until he finally wanted to go. Like when he was 2 or 3 years old, he wanted to be with other kids, and we went to 2 or 3 because, you know, you leave your child there and you come get him and he's kind of like out of it. I'm like, And so finally, you know, we found one that it was like all inclusive, that had, you know, people with Down syndrome, people, it's all kinds of people. It was like, they taught him to be good people, you know, it was called Open Door, very special place. That worked, right? So, you know, but so we took him to this prep school, and you know, it smelled like my school. It smelled like the good stuff of my school, all the books and stuff. And okay, so, and he was all excited. He loved his teacher and everything. And so after a year and a half or 2 years, you know, I turned to MJ, and I've been observing this for like a year. And I said, look, MJ's my husband. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? And it's like, the kids are weird, right? I'm like, right? These are not the same kids we gave them, right? Like what's happening to all? So we observed that all the children were changing. And I know they tell you, you know, that they're 7-year-old, that they're going to change, blah, blah, blah. They have, but that wasn't it. It was, well, it was, but it was, I mean, I didn't buy the excuse. Like, it's like, you know, and then I really started observing what was going on in that school, really looking at the curriculum, really looking at what they were doing, how everything functioned, because, you know, he was getting angry. The other kids were getting detached. Other kids were getting vindicative. It was market. I mean, and I think every parent observes this.
They're all coping. They're all coping in their own way.
Yes, something's wrong. Something's fundamentally wrong, because the children we give them, they are this brilliant, full of life, exuberant, logos, they're genius. They're little geniuses, and they're full of it. They're full of life, right? And actually so much that when I took him, when he was 5, to this school, you know, and we had this meeting with him and everything, you know, I said to the lady, to the principal, I said, look, you know, I do want a good education. I love knowledge. You know, I'm a writer, we're professionals, you know, all that. But I said, but, you know, I said, you see this light in his eyes? And I actually did say that to her. And I said, that's what I care the most about. I want that to stay. So I was concerned about him staying in touch with him, right? And I told him the same thing that my mother told me. I mean, that fierce protection of your heart and your freedom, right? And your sense of self, right? And my mother had an innate sense of freedom in her. Like, she was wild. My mother was brought up in a forest, and she was a wild person. I mean, she was very strong, you know, very intuitive. You know, everybody went to her to help, you know, them psychologically. It was like almost, you know, like a seer, right? And I have that too. And so, you know, I was wanting to protect the same thing that had been protected for me, but even more, right? My mother didn't fight this. My mother adapted. Like, she would play with the system. Like, she would understand it, and she would play, but then she would say, you know what I'm saying? She would be very diplomatic. I've never been like this. I don't have a diplomatic bone in my body. Like, I'm all in your face, kind of super direct, you know. And my mother was like, look, why can't you like be more diplomatic? I say, why should I be more diplomatic? This is bullshit. And period. You know, it should be obvious. Of course it isn't, right? But so I was always like that, right? And so with the school, you know, and then I started looking at things. I said, okay, so I looked at the curriculum. I said, where did the philosophy go? You know, why are these kids in this basement repeating the same thing over and over and over? Because they were like badgering him, like, and he didn't want to do it. And I said, if you wait, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, he's going to do that in 5 minutes. So now you want him to be in this basement doing this over and over when he doesn't want to do it. And you're going to make him, instead of being outside playing, because why? Wait, and then he'll do it. And boom, that I knew, right? It was obvious to me. Like, some things were easy for him, some weren't. And some things were the time, some things wasn't the time. He wasn't ready. Then I started learning, then I started studying. And now I'm going to start sharing the screen, because that's one of the things that I would like people to see, because it was a very important book. So it was, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So this book, this is a guy here in the University of Texas. So I found this book, and this whole book, it's about how children really learn. Like, do they really learn by, small measurable increments in equal, in blocks, or that's how we're teaching them, right? So you teach them something, and that's one thing that annoyed me to no end when I went to school. Like, they would teach you something. First of all, they would repeat it like 50,000 times. It's like, okay, I got it like the first time, and now I have to sit here all this time listening it again and again and again and again. And then they would come back next year and they would repeat it again with maybe a little bit more information. And then again on the third year with a little bit more information. It's like, no, I mean, just, when you're ready to learn it, you learn it, right? And that's what I was observing that was happening with Killian. Like, some things, he was ready and he was got it in one moment, and then they repeated and repeated and repeated. He never wanted to do homework, all that. And so I started questioning everything, and I never had done that. It didn't occur to me, but it was kind of to protect him. So I really dove into it, and I read some books, and then I landed on this book. And this book is written to talk mostly about this school called Sri Mananda Memorial School, which is a school that was started in Austin by a social worker that went to India and took her son with her. And when they got there, they liked the school so much that she asked permission to open one in Austin. So the principles of the school is that the children are wanting to learn innately, that you don't have to make them learn, that they know how they need to learn and when they need to learn and how they need to learn, that mostly they learn from each other, and also that they need to be choosing their teacher. And then they need to develop a relationship of trust with their teacher and keep the teacher over the years. And then things are offered to the children, but they're not enforced. And the core of the education is the unconditional respect of the child and and consideration of the child. And that took me to another thing that I realized we're doing, because observing these children in this other school, it started to look to me like we were betraying the children. And why do I say that? I say that a lot. It's like, we betray our children. And if you think about it, we totally do that. Like we don't listen to them. We don't care what they have to say. They don't have any say in their own fucking education, which is bullshit. We treat them like they're demented, and which is not true. It's proven that children actually, when they're small, they test a genius level, most of them. It's when they go to school that they become stupid. Honestly, they lose IQ points. They lose themselves. They forget themselves. They lose the connection with their own hearts. We are doing that. And today I wrote something, thinking about this talk, that, we all know there's something seriously wrong the way we live. We all know this. But the ones that know it the most is the children. They know, they don't know it in their minds. They know in their beingness. They know in the way they are. But the children are so loving, and they love us so much that they trust us more than they trust themselves. But it's out of love. It's not because they're stupid. It's not because they don't know. It's not because they need somebody to lead them. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's out of love. They love us so much that they want to please us. And if we say something like, sure, okay, let's go. We'll do that. Okay, you say it's like this. Okay, I want to do it like this, mama. Right? Even though he might be wanting to be doing another thing. It's out of love. It's out of devotion, right? So that same love and devotion they have for learning. It's innate. They couldn't even survive if they didn't do that. They could not survive if their innate desire of learning, right? So the schooling we do, and I will go to another book right here, and you probably know this book, right? Okay. So this book is called The Leipzig Connection. The Systematic Destruction of American Education. This book was written in the 70s, I think, late 70s, and explains how the children were destroyed in purpose, how they're destroying our children on purpose. It's deliberate. And this book proves it. It's a tiny little book and explains the names, the locations, who did it, how they did it, exactly how it worked. And it was this Rockefeller Foundation guys that hired these German professors that basically were experimenting with the children. And they were experimenting to do something very specific, which was to make them obedient. And that's this whole book. And it's not a theory. It's a complete description, blow by blow, of how it actually worked. When they changed the curriculums, how they changed them, why, and to what. And these are the guys. These are the guys that did it. I mean, these are their names and phone numbers and everything. I mean, look at this, experimental psychology at work, the backdrop for today's educational method. So when you study education at school, it's based on these guys. But these guys were hired not to make children learn better. These guys were hired to make their children worse. Systematically. I mean, it's to the T. It's not, people think these things are casual and not intentional. I don't think it's true. I think there is plenty of evidence that is deliberate. And this book, which is, I think it's public domain by now. And if not, I mean, you can't find it. I have it, the PDF in there. I did ask permission to Gary Borick to distribute his book. He had it for free on his website. And so he never answered me. He's retired now, but he had it for free on his own page. So, I assume it's okay.
All right. Well, there was one mother's story about her son in the educational system, and I've listened to John Taylor Gatto and Charlotte Iserby, but I've heard that name, Leipzig Connection, but I think I'm going to look up a copy of that book and give that a read for myself, because like figuring out who did it and why and when and how. So that book seems to be a good one.
Yeah, I'll be looking on LibGen for it.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I should look up there.
The sad thing is, there's people that contributed to this, and there's goons running around now. They're promoting it now. And so it'd be good to know who they pass the baton on to, and who do we need to deal with in the here and now.
Right. Well, yeah, and you can see on the news who's behind Common Core.
Mm-hmm.
I won't get into it here, but it's readily available information for anybody that looks. Well,
yeah.
I'll go ahead.
Because I deal with schools with my nonprofit, and just to see the culture that's put by administrators, by teachers. Most of the teachers are involved. They've given over already. They're like, oh, we can only teach what's in Common Core or this curriculum. My take on it is, okay, how do I co-opt what they've done without telling anybody? And so as I'm developing curriculum for what I'm doing, there's going to be things put in there that I don't have to clear with anybody. If somebody wants to learn the curriculum, great. We'll show them that. But my expectation dealing with this with a school district or the Board of Education, that's a waste of time.
Oh yeah. I've got a lot of friends who ended up in the teaching profession, and you just talk to them and they're all so demoralized. And they were extremely demoralized before this year. And this year has just pushed most of them over the edge, it seems like. But they still love the kids and they still believe in the system. They haven't been presented with a lot of this evidence, or if they have been, they haven't really dug into it. And they just think there's no way to fix it. They just got to do what they can within those strict confines. in that small frame of reference that they've been given.
Oh yeah. And I've been around enough of them to know, and some of them that just get into this, they get the impression, oh, I can change it from the inside. And they get in there and they realize, nope, you're another brick in the wall. Until you do something outside of the parameters, that's all you're going to be. So I've seen people suffer through that, and for the people that have wised up, they're working with me currently because they know they can't conform to the system. We have to come up with our own, and that's where we'll leave it.
Oh yeah. I mean, Elgato, he was doing his darndest to do it within the system, but even he got fed up and had to quit and start working outside the system to try and change people and not necessarily change the system. Maybe get rid of the system and fix some people, and then they'll be able to take care of it themselves.
Sure, that's very true. Just I can relate with the lady's testimonial from a student perspective. I started out in grade school here in America, and my parents were fortunate enough to get an overseas job in the United Arab Emirates, and this was in 1980. And so for 4 years, I wasn't in the American school system. I was put into a kind of exactly what she was talking about. It was I had the same 3-4 teachers for 4 years, and you develop a relationship with them. I was the only American in these classes, and the amount of information that was presented kind of stuck and stayed. And I came back to the States in '84, and it was like you start seeing the same stuff over and over and over and over. And it was like, whoa. I was a kid, so I didn't know, who to question, who to complain to. But long story short, the day I graduated from high school, kids were celebrating and all that other stuff. My parents came out to the football field and say, hey, let's celebrate. No, I grabbed my parents by the wrists and I dragged them off the football field. And I can tell you exactly what was going on in my mind at that time. And I felt like I pissed away 2 years of my life. That's exactly how I felt. And that ain't changed because it was like, why was I here? I was already working. I've been in the workforce since I was 14 because I knew, okay, at that time, I knew what I needed to know. I learned that in the Emirates of all places. So they didn't teach me anything else for the last 4 years of school. It was just repeat and rinse. And I knew, okay, I'm growing up, I'm going into manhood. I need to be able to provide a living for myself. And so, I got in the workforce, and I was a full-time employee when I graduated, and I didn't miss a beat. I just knew I wasn't happy being in school.
Oh yeah, seems like that's a consensus that's going around. Well, talking again about high pressure and low pressure zones. I mean, I knew how to read before kindergarten because when I was a little kid, my mom would read to me, and I'd just sit there, looking at the page. Eventually, you kind of get a hang of it. So when I got into kindergarten, they're struggling to read, and I'm just reading along perfectly fine. And then, so I was a voracious reader of books from a young age. But then you get into the school system, and they're presenting you with all these books to read. Say in high school, I took a bunch of reading classes. And they're good books. I mean, we were reading like Slaughterhouse-Five and Catcher in the Rye and Catch-22, but just being in that high pressure zone, even though I loved reading and I would read all the time in my spare time during the semester, I wouldn't read at all. I wouldn't read any of those books that they had. Luckily, I kept a few, so I've ended up reading them since then. But it's like at home, you just have the book laying there. That's extremely low pressure. I think I'll pick that up and take a look at what's inside. But then someone's trying to force you to read, even if it's a good book. I just bristled at that. I didn't want to do anything but read at that point.
That's awesome. Yeah, my experience with reading is when I started out the schools here in America, I didn't know how to read. I did not learn how to read until I went to the Emirates, because they identified that right away. Well, here I'm in the third grade and I don't know how to read, and um, so they combined some of my schoolwork reading with recreation. So I learned how to read through comic books, um, to be honest. And but it got me proficient to get caught up. And then they give you something, a better book to read or another book to read, and you learn that. You learn the comprehension behind that. And then by the time I got back to the States, I was reading stuff like Stephen King. Um, you know, but it was a book without the
Right.
pictures. And even to this day, I'll read a comic book for recreational reading, but I can pick up a book and comprehend it in technical manuals, things like that. But I know where I originally learned the concepts of reading. It was from a comic book from the Emirates.
So you think over there they were schooling people to be obedient, or were they in somewhat ways more
It was
culturing
a
independent thought and creativity, or how do you think the comparison would be?
they were using more of a, because so it wasn't public school at that time in 1980. The Emirates was really starting to get all their money from all the oil, and the country wasn't developed the way it is now. And so they hired so many people to come in and build up the country. And so my dad was a contractor that was hired to build the first state of the art hospital in the Emirates. And so part of that uh, compensation deal was your kids were going to get put into a real school, accelerated learning. You graduate in the 10th grade. And so a lot of British influences. And so the company that was brought in, the teachers were all British, other than my French teacher and my Arabic teacher. But it was the same group of teachers that kind of molded me. But what I remember about that time was there wasn't this. Uh, they didn't want you to just sit there and be there. They wanted you to really develop as a child and going into an adult. And so they gave us a lot of latitude on stuff. So I don't remember, there's some discipline formed in that as well. But it wasn't like when I came back to the States where it's, where they teach you just to be a worker. Over there, they really encourage you to think, um, and to be involved, and to be expressive. I didn't get that feeling here. It was just kind of just sit in your chair, learn your studies, take a test, go home, rinse and repeat. And so I've talked to some of my friends about that system, and we came to the conclusion that that type of schooling was really designed for people with a sense for international studies. This is the group of people that um, they travel, they're involved in their community, um, and to quantify that is, like I said, I was the only American in the class, and I wasn't discriminated against. I didn't feel like I was out of place. Everybody got along on that level, but you were allowed to be you. That was probably the most important thing, is because I don't remember anybody coming to me and say, "Well, you can't be this because of that." I mean, how often is that playing out in the school system now? Um, and so I really, when I look at it from that lens, I can say, so, oh wow, they did let me be me. I got a chance to develop to be me, and no, and so a very different type of school, and there wasn't a technical name behind it, but they presented information in a way where you had to think and make your own conclusions from it. We weren't just, oh, here's what to think. No, it wasn't anything like that at all.
No, it sounds a lot better.
Oh yeah, no, because I use it to this day. I mean, like I said, my last 4 years of school was, some variant or repeat of what I learned in the Emirates. I really didn't feel like I was in a school again until I went to trade school and learned how to do architecture and computer aided design and technical writing. But I didn't derive the the skill sets for that from high school. No, I don't give them any credit for that. I got that from the Emirates.
Right. Yeah. Pretty interesting. All right. Well, I think I got one more clip queued up. So this clip's from the lecture last night. So let's see how it is.
What was the goal of
all the Zoom controls keep popping up in front of what I'm trying to do. All right, here we go.
There are people out there who are successful who did not graduate high school or college. Unfortunately, most of the people who they show you are not people who are fond of freedom, I would say, at least from those photographs. But there is a trend that there are many wealthy, successful people out there, just not these guys, who are nice people who didn't graduate college, who cut their way through seeing opportunity and hard work and legitimate, above board type of transactions. They're just not glorified in the legacy media that you see out there. I don't know why they don't want to show legit hardworking people, and they want to show you these fake characters all the time with wealth that they didn't really accumulate. I mean, let's just go back for a second. Branson, he's a very questionable character. I won't dig too hard into him. But Bill Gates, he stole from other tech companies and then got approval to be like the world's governor. Larry Ellison, he's the guy right next to Bill Gates. He used to be the second richest person in the world. He founded Oracle Corporation. Oracle Corporation was developed by the CIA and the Defense Department, and he got to take over the project and be the front man to take it public. Okay? So I'm not going to say the same thing about Gates because I don't know that much detail, but I do know that much detail about Mr. Ellison. And then as far as those other guys, Ted Turner, and I don't know who that is, but other successful people on their scale who haven't graduated college. Yeah, there's a lot of people who haven't graduated college out there, and they hire college graduates to do all the work they need to do because they know how the world works and how to make offers to the world and bring in money and enlist people to their endeavors. So what I'm trying to point out is there are unsaturated areas of opportunity. It's all around in today's digital landscape. Data has been commoditized. It's out there everywhere. So what's valuable? The value is organizing data in formation. You can have a lot of data. LinkedIn, any of these places will sell you leads. It's a lot of data. The information part where you put that data in formation to an understanding, that comes from having a conversation. That comes from picking up the phone and saying, hey, I heard that you were interested in this, or whatever the thing that you were saying on the phone for that conversation, to find out if they are someone who needs your product or service, right? The data is in the structuring of that conversation, and that can't be done yet as far as we see as you know, for the AI, but it's coming. They're trying to. Organized data equals value. It has utility. This is essential because, you know, it's like there's famous people and you don't know what they're famous for. There's a lot of people out there in the world doing business and they have no idea what value or utility are, but they're transacting all the time. So they're not putting work into it. And that's Enron. That's some of the big, companies that rip off the world and go steal. Bernie Madoff, he had some organized data and the people around him did not have organized data. He knew the value and utility of the data that he was pushing around. He just took it past the lines. Networking. It equals a methodology for accessing organized data via relationships with other individuals and organizations. That's what it is. Hey, we're trying to do this. We don't know how to do this. Let's call somebody else who knows how to do this. And they can either tell us how to do it, or we can hire them to come do it for us. That's the relationship with other organizations and individuals. Guess how those relationships are had? Through conversations. You're right, conversations. That, the sales part of it is the first meeting has to lead to the second meeting. And if there's no second meeting, then there's probably not a relationship. So the sales aspect is simply how to run an effective meeting, how to deliver value and utility in a meeting. So before you go looking for, I'm going to have this skill set, all these other stuff, just learn the simple things: how to show up on time, how to listen, how to observe, how to see that opportunity, and how to add value and utility where other people are struggling and indicate that they would like help. That's it. Now, on top of that, you can develop the high value skill sets and add all these other cool things in. But if you can't do that basic thing, having having a samurai sword and not having the samurai's practice and discipline and all these other things isn't going to make you a samurai. Is that a good way to say it? I just made that up. Your network is directly proportional to your net worth. This is a common saying in the marketing industry. Guess what? It's true. If you're hanging around with a bunch of people who are playing video games, not learning anything about the world, not investing in themselves to get any skills, and you guys aren't making money by playing video games or facilitating someone else who's playing video games and making money, your network and their net worth is probably pretty low. And your net worth is probably pretty low because you're not thinking around other people who are thinking upwardly. They're kind of static. They're, not growing. So you surround yourself with people who are on the upward path of realizing they don't know everything. They would like to improve their situations. They're going to do some learning and hard work. And as you're around people who are better than you, you're going to grow from that. And as you're around people who don't have as much experience as you, you're going to grow through that too, because that's going to be from the teaching aspect. So as you're in the stream or current of people who are learning or growing in the right direction, your net worth is going to grow because now you know more people who help to solve the relevant problems that are prioritized in your life, because that's part of the process of growing those relationships. Oh, we run a business and consistently we're going to need to know someone who does X, right? You could be in some business, you need to know, you're a wealth advisor, you need to know a CPA, or you need to know a financial broker that does whatever. So you're going to need to have people in that relationship because your clients have certain needs and you can't meet all their needs. So you're going to need someone you trust to be able to say, here's a person who can solve that aspect for you. That's your network. And being able to help more clients meet their needs and get their goals achieved, even if it's not going through your services, is essential, which goes back to that idea of like the partner programs and the channel, they call it channel managers because it's a channel of revenue that's companies and smaller companies brokering between larger companies. I guess that's the best way to explain it. Those types of networks churn money in the economy. They're not random one-off transactions. It's almost like you're standing by a lightning rod because lightning strikes there a lot. You're not just standing in a random place. You're like, it strikes here consistently, and they're camping out near where the revenue is flowing. So it's like streams. So it gets back to the banks. It's all controlled by the banks. Your network is directly proportional to your potential net worth. So that's a more accurate description than the common marketing vernacular. They're saying it's like a definitive thing. And I'm saying, well, it's directly proportional to your potential. It doesn't mean if you hang out with smart people that you get to be as successful as they are, because you might not be seizing the same opportunities. You might not be handling those opportunities the same way. So it's more about equality, but not guaranteed equal outcomes. Like it's equality of potential, but who does the work and who puts themselves in the meetings and who does the more calls and who practices harder, or who is just more lucky, I guess, being prepared when opportunity strikes, is going to be moving forward. So it is something that you have control over. It's one of the few things in life you have control over. Who do you surround yourself with? Who do you spend time with? So this course is not just a course of action. It's a community of individuals seeking excellence and freedom in their lives. And at this point in human history, it's the ultimate networking tool for cognitive liberty and economic self-reliance. Because at this point, if you're not dealing with people who have a lens of freedom and slavery, you're going to be dealing with people with a lot of blind spots. So if you're dealing with people with lots of blind spots, you're going to have to ask more questions. It takes longer to build up trust. It takes longer to effectively solve problems than being able to just, click in a chat someplace and ask the copywriting department if they could look over your website, these sort of things. So being in action for yourself also means as you're doing it along with other people, it's going to be easier for you to get the answers more quickly than to have to go out, search the internet, make a call, schedule an appointment, build a new relationship. Okay, now I got this answer. Great. Now what's my next step? Okay, I have to go back to the internet, look out on the internet, find a person, make a meeting, have a call, get this piece of information. Now I can move to the next step. This facilitates that much more readily.
All right. So, yeah, your network is proportional to your net worth or something like that. But not like that. And within the broader understanding of worth that autonomy talks about, I mean, it's not just how much money you have in the bank either. It's like, what worth are you to the world and to those around you and to yourself even? I mean, if you know a lot of people and you expand your frame of reference, then you're going to be able to provide value to more people. You're going to be able to help those people, help them solve their problems. That's going to make you worthy in their eyes, worthy to maybe throw you a couple bucks to repay you for that service that you gave them, or maybe just if you need a favor in the future, they'll be willing to help you out, or help you move house or something. When you provide value to people, they want to provide value back for the most part, it seems like, because a lot of people seem to be caught up in this whole wrecked system. But in my observation, a lot of them still want to do good. So if you can give them a little bit of a example of worth and providing value in their lives or in other people's lives around them, it seems like they like to pay back that service. So what do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I had to move out to my car, so I had to leave the office. One of those trainings that I took 10 years ago, that was actually the first thing that was harped upon is your net worth is in a proportion to your network. So at the time, I had to learn how to be a networker. I didn't have a great crowd of people around me at the time when I learned that, and so but it inspired me to go out and meet more people. And as time went on, people started to know that I had this network of people to work through. So I always was being recruited for different things like network marketing groups and other things and stuff through the Chamber of Commerce and all that other stuff. And so, and people still try to recruit me for network marketing. So they're like, "Oh, you got this network?" Yeah, I do have a network, but it ain't for that. So I just had to meet people, and as time goes on, as you come up with your product or service, you've got that warm market to put that information out to, regardless of whatever it is. And so, yeah, I've developed a network over the last 10 years. I can put information out there, and I'm really picky about as I'm developing the curriculum and my product and different things. I got a place to put it. Which I'm thankful for because I've been able to build these lists over the years. So you got to start somewhere, and just get to it, build your list, get to know people, in not just whatever industry you're in, but no matter what it is. When you take an interest in people, they'll take an interest in you. So once again, great content.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's getting to know people. That's part of being a human being. I mean, we don't live in a vacuum. We got people around us. We got people hurting around us. The hurt people around us are hurting even more people around us. You got to put yourself out there, try and solve some problems. You want to see the world become a better place. Just ticking off a checkbox on a little piece of paper every 4 years, every 2 years, that's not really doing it. But if you actually look out there and see people putting themselves out there, solving problems, helping other people learn how to solve their own problems, how to solve other people's problems. I mean, it's exponential growth if it gets to a certain point. You know, you're pushing the boulder up the hill, but that's pretty hard. But once you get it to the top of the hill, you just stand back and it's going to go. It's going to go fast, and it's going to take out whatever's in front of it. So you don't want to push it in the wrong direction, but you know, if you do, that's a lot of power. It's a lot of power coming from the work that you did that's being put out into the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things I used to do, because I know it can be hard to beat people. And so from a professional level, I actually ended up in a group at one of the Chamber of Commerce's where their whole committee was to organize networking events. So the benefit I got was I participated in these events that I'm orchestrating. I'd meet 100 people every other week, and it was great because you get their business card, their contact information. You know, they knew I was in the paint industry and you know, all that good stuff, and I got to learn about lawyers and other business people, other entrepreneurs, and how they presented themselves. And so I was able to build this database of people that, you know, as I started to do other events, as I got my nonprofit started, I had a warm list of people that, you know, is everybody going to respond to your whatever your offer is? No, but you've got a place to start. You've got a track record with people, because once again, it comes down to people working with those that they know, like, and trust. And if you're putting things out there that are a benefit to people, that they're going to respond to that. Maybe not right away, but you have a baseline of excellence to start with, regardless of what the product or the service is. If you've got that baseline, you're going to open a lot of doors.
Oh yeah. Well, and two, it's like we in this class talk about go out there and rack up some failures, because eventually you're gonna fail, and a failure to fail is a success. But that just doesn't apply to going out there to sell things. That can also be just go out there and meet people. I mean, everybody that you meet, you're not gonna click with. You're gonna maybe not like some of them, think some of them are horrible people, but you know, you are going to find people out there that you do connect with, that do help you achieve your goals, and maybe you can help them achieve some of their goals. So you're not going to meet those people if you don't get through the people that you don't have anything in common with or can't stand. I mean, you got to build up a little bit of a thick skin to kind of
Sure
brush off those interactions.
That's how you learn.
Oh yeah.
You learn from, okay, this went wrong. I had a bad experience. What do I need to do to not experience that again? Sometimes that's not easy to peg down. Now, in a group like this, okay, now we can identify it. Once again, we're around a group of peers that have done this in one way or another. Okay, this is my experience here, and I can draw from that. So not every speed bump in the road I necessarily have to hit. Personally, you know, if that person hit it, they had a bad experience. Do I want to go experience that for myself? Not necessarily. And so, yeah, so there's some things that you can learn along the way that, okay, that wasn't a great experience, or I could have done it differently or better, or whatever the case may be. But thankfully, I hear from other people, and I hear their experience, like, okay, that could have happened to me at that one time, you know, or whatever the case may be. So the learning curve doesn't have to be, you know, over 10 years like me. It's like, you know, hey, you know, you shorten that runway and learn from other people. And so for the folks that are kind of new into sales and marketing, really do that dojo work, because you're going to get great experience from that, and it's real world. Yeah, so I mean, I had to learn it the hard way, and that's not pleasant, but I still had to get it done.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and we get the pads and the foam swords in the dojo, so you're not going to get hurt. You're just going to at least have a good time.
Yeah.
And I think if you
And
come in
it's
come in
people that want to
relaxed.
get to the same place.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're there to help you get where you're going. Help yourself. All right.
Definitely.
Well, I think we've been about an hour, but I got a little bit. I watched a little bit of an interview this last week with Elaine Robert. I don't know if you guys know about him. He's the human spider. He's the guy who climbs tall buildings on the
That sounds
outside
fun.
with no ropes or anything. Yeah, I watched a documentary about him a couple of years ago, and apparently he had a bad fall when he was young climbing and busted up like 60% of his body, and the doctor said, "You're probably never going to climb anymore." But, he didn't take no for an answer, and he started working, getting a little better every day, and now he's just hanging off the sides of buildings with no ropes and living and doing it again and again and again. And it's just, in this class, we're talking about, going out there and talking to people, forming a relationship, maybe starting a business. But so many people out there are terrified to do any of those things. But really, it's not hard. You just got to do a little practice. And even if you fail, you're still going to be alive. Unlike some of these guys who are accomplishing incredible feats of human achievements that could very well kill them, and they're still there. It's the difference between, a lot of times talking to people, it seems like they think that the body controls the mind. Your discomfort level is going to stop you from doing things, or your fear level is going to stop you from doing things, or even just the idea of brain chemistry too, to a certain extent. You're going to say, "Oh, I've got this excuse to not go out there and do what I want to do and achieve my goals because someone else told me that I couldn't because there was something wrong with me."
Sure.
The doctor told him something was wrong with him. He broke most of his wrists. You need your wrists when you're climbing, but he still did it. So I got a little bit of I think I'm going to mute it in case there's any kind of copyright strike for the song. I'd like to avoid that. But before we go, let's take a look at this guy hanging off the side of a building.
Sure.
All right. There he is. How many people would actually go out there and just grab a hold of the side of the building as hard as they can? And some of those buildings he's climbing, it's like he doesn't even have I don't even see how he's gripping onto it. It's glass. Some of them is windy and slightly rainy. There's no real place to rest right there. He's just on a sheer face of a building. But
wow.
But he knows he can do it. He's conquered his fear. He's got a handle on his emotions so he doesn't freak out. And it's just like he makes it look as easy as walking down the street. And he's not the only one either. In this class, I've heard a lot of people talk about Wim Hof. Here's old Wim Hof climbing up to the top of a mountain in the snow, in shorts. And this clip's so impressive because he's gone with a group of people that he just taught how to do this. So it's not like he's some genetic marvel. He just learned tricks by using his mind that he could implement on his body. And now he's achieving things that people would think are totally impossible. Look at them. They don't even look cold. They look like they're walking down a humid jungle path. And then also there was one I heard of the other day that I had to look into. A guy trained to jump out of a parachute or jump out of a plane with no parachute. So there he goes right there. I mean, who thinks jumping out of a plane is a good idea? I mean, it'd probably be fun to parachute. Don't get me wrong. I've never done it. But a lot of people would say that jumping out of a plane without a parachute is the worst idea that you could possibly have. But here he is. There he's doing it. Fast forward a little closer. When he jumped, he could not even see the goal. He just practiced it so much with a parachute on that he knew he could do it. And here he is getting down. He's got to flip over, so he can't even see his goal right at the very end. And he made it. He hit the net, and he's still alive. Same as Wim Hof still alive. Same as Elaine Roberts still alive. I started watching that Free Solo documentary the other day. Maybe 20, 30 minutes in, but again, another person, you know, climbing a huge mountain, no rope. Not that I'm recommending everybody go out there and do it, but if you want to, it's possible. You could work your way up there, and people have died doing it, but that doesn't stop people from doing it. Doesn't stop people from succeeding. So for a lot of us out there that are just scared to talk to a person, scared to go out in public, scared to achieve our goals, there's people out there doing a lot scarier things, and they're still making it. So you probably shouldn't think that your body controls your mind, because plenty of evidence that it's the other way around. And if you can get your mind to control your body, very few things are impossible. So let's do it live for this week. If anybody's got some final thoughts. Thanks for hanging out, Danny. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're muted.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you.
Yeah, and so I had one comment about the video. Ironically, the guy's name was Alain, and that was the town in the Emirates that I grew up in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was in the Abu Dhabi province. So it was a little oasis town along the Oman border, and they didn't have much infrastructure there, but they had all this money coming in, and they decided they wanted to do a hospital. So that had a direct impact on my upbringing. But yeah, it was just interesting to see the guy's name, and just we talked a little bit about it. So just a little bit of coincidence there.
Oh yeah, right. The universe rhymes if you can hear it.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, once again, happy birthday to Joshua Hale. Thanks for letting me fill in. I hope he's having a fun birthday weekend. And I will talk to you all later. Have a good one, everybody.
Take care.